I am 58 years old, pushed to the edge of a trip I secretly planned to reconnect with my son. My daughter-in-law smirked, dropping her suitcase on the bed that was mine. As I turned to leave, the hotel owner rushed past the crowded lobby to hug me. That embrace ignited a firestorm of contracts and secrets, and the woman who smirked was about to lose everything. My name is Margaret Hale. I am 58 years old, a widow, and I spend 3 days a week keeping the books balanced at the Northbridge Ledger Cooperative. Balancing my own life, however, has proven more difficult. My son, Caleb, who is 33, has drifted. He is not lost, exactly, but he is anchored to a different shore now, one controlled by his wife, Lana. This trip to the Riverton Crest Hotel in Silver Ridge, Colorado, was my attempt to build a bridge back to him. It was meant to be a reconciliation weekend, just the two of us, in the mountains. I booked the Aspen Suite myself, the best room in the hotel, using my own name. The confirmation email arrived, crisp and clear. When I forwarded the itinerary to Caleb, it was Lana who replied. Her email was brief, just 6 words that chilled the screen. Just let me handle the arrangements. I should have recognized the dismissal then. I should have known she was not arranging. She was commandeering. I arrived at the hotel just before 3 o'clock, the scent of pine and old money filling the grand lobby. The girl at the front desk, her name tag read, Maya, looked pale. She was juggling a phone call, her eyes wide with panic. The caller's voice, sharp and demanding, crackled through the speakerphone she was frantically trying to silence. Cancel the mother-in-law's room, the voice snapped. I only need the 5 rooms for my family. Maya fumbled with the receiver. Before she could disconnect the speaker, I heard one last fragment clearly, cancel it for me. My family is arriving now. Then, silence. Maya looked up and saw me. She looked like a deer caught in the headlights of an oncoming truck. The automatic glass doors slid open, and my son walked in. Caleb. His shoulders were slumped, the way they always were now, carrying a weight that was not his own. He walked half a step behind Lana Whitmore, who strode in as if she owned the polished marble floor. She saw me standing at the counter, and the corner of her mouth lifted in a small, tight smirk. It was not a greeting. It was a confirmation of victory. Mum, Caleb said, his voice muted. Lana just nodded, her eyes already scanning the lobby for signs of imperfection. I ignored the smirk. I kept my voice level, the same tone I use when questioning a discrepancy in the ledgers. I am here to check in, I told Maya. Margaret Hale. I have the Aspen Suite reserved. Maya's hand trembled as she typed. Her knuckles were white. Mom, she whispered. I am so sorry. The system. It shows the Aspen Suite has been switched. She turned the monitor slightly. I did not need to see the screen. I saw the name reflected in her terrified eyes, Whitmore. Switched by whom? I asked, keeping my voice soft. Maya looked down, avoiding my gaze. It required a manager's code. Ma'am. That was it. This was not a mistake. This was an override. Someone with internal access had manually moved my reservation. My eyes moved from Maya's pale face to Lana, who was busy inspecting her manicure. I did not raise my voice. I did not look at my son. I pulled my phone from my purse, found Lana's number, and pressed call. Her phone buzzed in her hand, a loud, obnoxious vibration against the quiet tension. She looked at the screen, confused. then looked at me, standing 10 feet away. "Lana," I said into the phone, my voice clear enough for everyone at the desk to hear. "Meet me here in 20 minutes. I hung up before she could answer. I turned back to Maya, who looked like she might faint. "Please prepare a small meeting room for us," I said, handing her my credit card. "And coffee? Black." Maya nodded, grateful for a clear instruction. Caleb looked bewildered, caught between the two immovable forces in his life. Lana's smirk had finally faded, replaced by a flicker of irritation. The air in the lobby grew heavy, the silence stretching tight before the inevitable break. The family storm had just made landfall. The small meeting room Maya had reserved remained empty. The coffee I had ordered sat untouched, growing cold. It did not take 20 minutes. When the automatic doors slid open this time, it was Lana. But she had brought reinforcements. She was flanked by her mother, Miranda Whitmore, and her aunt, Elise. They moved like a tribunal, not guests arriving for a weekend in the mountains. They were dressed in expensive, structured wool, their jewelry subtle but clearly costly. They looked like they were here to judge a social competition, and I was the first contestant to be eliminated. "We are ready for the keys to the Aspen Suite," Lana announced, her voice ringing with authority. She did not speak to me, but directly to Maya, as if I were merely a piece of the lobby decor. I stepped forward, keeping my posture straight. "That suite is reserved in my name. Lana." Lana finally turned her gaze to me, her smile thin and surgical. "Mother Hale, it is far more practical for my family to use the suite. A standard room is perfectly reasonable for you." I looked at my son. Caleb stood just behind her, his gaze fixed on the intricate pattern of the carpet. "Caleb." He flinched, his eyes darting to me for a fraction of a second before looking away. "Mom?" he mumbled, his voice so low I could barely hear it. "It is a big room. We have guests. Can you just switch for peace?" The word peace felt like a betrayal. "This is not about switching," I said, my voice quiet but firm. I looked back at Maya, who seemed to be shrinking behind the monitor. "I want to know who used an internal manager code to change the name on my booking." Lana waved her hand, a gesture of impatient dismissal. "Do not be so dramatic. I was just optimizing the booking for the family. It is complicated. You would not understand." Miranda Whitmore stepped forward, adjusting her cashmere wrap. She sniffed the air as if it offended her. "Lana, darling, I truly do not know why you chose this rustic little town. The air is so thin. In Phoenix, we only stay at 5-star properties. They understand proper service." The insult was multi-layered, a clear reminder of my class, my choices, my inadequacy. "I want to see the system logs," I repeated, my voice like ice. "I want to see the ID that accessed my reservation." Maya's eyes welled with tears. She shook her head. "Mrs. Hale, I cannot. I do not have the authorization to see that. Only a manager." "See." Lana cut her off, snatching a key card from the counter that Maya had not even offered. "It is handled." She grabbed Caleb's arm, pulling him from his paralysis. "We are going up." She marched toward the elevator, a conquering general, her army of 2 following. Caleb dragged along as her prisoner. I watched them go. Then, against all my instincts for self-preservation, I followed. I did not ride with them. I took the next elevator, the silence ringing in my ears. I stepped out onto the 4th floor. The door to the Aspen suite, Suite 414, was ajar. I stood in the hall. I could hear their voices. Put my bags on the main rack. Caleb, not that one. I pushed the door open a few more inches, standing in the shadow of the entryway. Lana walked straight to the enormous, king-sized bed, the one I had dreamed of sleeping in, and tossed her designer suitcase onto the pristine white duvet. She pulled out her phone, angled her chin, and snapped a selfie with the mountain view behind her. I heard her murmur the caption as she typed, "Finally in the right place?" A quiet laugh echoed from the sitting area. "Miranda." I stood there, invisible, watching my son stand stiffly in the entryway of a life I could no longer access. The feeling was overwhelming. It was not just a room, it was a removal, an erasure. I had been deleted from my own family, relegated to a standard room, out of sight. I backed away slowly, my eyes stinging. I turned and walked toward the elevator bank, my hand shaking as I reached for the down button. I felt utterly and completely defeated. The elevator doors directly across from me slid open with a soft chime. A man stepped out, moving quickly, his brow furrowed with a sudden, sharp energy. He was tall, dressed in a sharp suit that spoke of authority, not leisure. He saw me, and his face, tight with anger, instantly softened into concern. He closed the distance between us in 3 long strides. "Margaret," he said, his voice low and urgent. And then, right there in the hallway, in full view of the open suite door where Lana and Miranda were watching, the hotel owner rushed forward and hugged me. He did not pat my back. He held me, a strong, protective embrace that anchored me to the floor. Lana, who had stepped into the doorway to see what the commotion was, froze. Her mouth fell open. The smirk was gone, replaced by a mask of pure, unfiltered shock. The embrace lasted only a few seconds, but it felt like a lifetime of strength being poured back into me. Owen Mercer, the owner of the Riverton Crest, pulled back, though he kept his hands firmly on my shoulders, steadying me. He said, his voice a low growl of anger not directed at me. "What is going on here?" I saw Lana's eyes narrow, the use of the initial, that simple, single letter, threw her off balance. It was an intimacy she could not compute and therefore could not control. "Owen," I said, my voice shaky but finding its footing. It seems my reservation for the Aspen suite was given away. Given away. His gaze hardened. He looked past me, his eyes locking on Lana, Miranda, and Elise, who were clustered in the doorway of the suite like startled crows. "I do not think so." He did not wait for an explanation. He just nodded toward the elevator. "Let's go back down to the desk." It was not a request. We were a bizarre procession, Owen leading, me at his side, and the Whitmore contingent following, their arrogance momentarily dented by this unexpected show of authority. Caleb trailed behind them all, his face a mask of confusion. Back in the lobby, the atmosphere had changed. The tension was no longer just a family drama. It was a management issue. Owen walked behind the front desk, his presence dwarfing poor Maya, who looked relieved and even more terrified all at once. "Maya," Owen said, his voice calm. "The key to the main safe, please." He retrieved a large manila envelope, sealed with red wax. My name was written on the front in his sharp, decisive handwriting M. Hale. To be opened by O, Mercer only, in the event of a booking dispute. Lana and Miranda stepped closer, their curiosity outweighing their pretense of boredom. Owen broke the seal. He did not pull out one document, but two. The first was a copy of my original booking contract, complete with my digital signature time-stamped from 6 weeks ago. The second was a separate addendum, a single page I knew well. "This," Owen announced, holding up the second page, "is a priority addendum, countersigned by me. It legally reserves the Aspen Suite for Margaret Hale, the primary signatory, regardless of other party requests." He looked directly at Lana. This reservation was ironclad. He turned to the main terminal. "Maya, what time did the Whitmore party check in?" Just before 3, sir," she stammered. Owen's fingers flew across the keyboard. "System log shows an admin override on booking 414 at 2:07 p.m. He frowned. "The ID used was EV Night. That is the emergency night manager card. Who is on that rotation?" "No one, sir," Maya whispered. "It is supposed to be locked in the back office." "Pull the lobby security footage," Owen commanded. 2:06 to 2:08 p.m. The video appeared on the monitor he had turned to face him. We all crowded around. The footage was silent, but crystal clear. It showed Maya at the desk, briefly turning her back to answer the internal phone. At that exact moment, Elise, Lana's aunt, was standing at the counter, ostensibly looking at brochures. The camera angle was perfect. It showed Elise holding her own phone, shielding the screen. But as she moved, the phone's screen was reflected, bright and clear, in the polished glass of the guest services sign on the counter. Owen hit pause. He zoomed in. My breath caught. There, on her screen, was a digital image of the Riverton Crest's EV Night Administrator Access Card, complete with its QR code. "You were showing Maya a code on your phone," Owen stated, his voice flat. "Pretending it was a request from the on-duty admin." Elise sputtered, her face turning a blotchy red. "I did not. I was just asking which rooms had the best view. I was showing her a picture of a view I liked." "The view," Owen said, "of my hotel's master key." Lana stepped in, attempting to regain control, her voice smooth. "This is clearly a misunderstanding. My aunt was just trying to help. We are VIP guests. Surely you understand we require—" "I understand forgery." Owen cut her off, his voice lethal. He turned to Maya. "The Aspen Suite reverts to Margaret Hale's name. Immediately. Rekey the entire floor and issue a single new card only to her." Caleb, who had been silent, suddenly found his voice. He looked from Owen to me, his confusion palpable. "Owen, you know my mum." The use of his first name startled me. Caleb knew him. Owen's gaze softened only when it landed on me. He looked back at my son. "More than no." "Caleb?" Lana's head snapped toward her husband, then to me. The simple hug. The M? The more than no. I could see the gears turning in her mind. She was building a new, incorrect assumption, one of a secret, romantic affair. Her frown was no longer one of annoyance. It was one of deep, acrid suspicion. Lana's suspicion was a physical thing, a heavy static in the lobby air. She was staring at me, staring at Owen, her mind clearly painting a lurid picture that was entirely wrong. The phrase, "more than no," echoed in the silence. She thought this was about an affair. She thought the quiet, dismissed mother-in-law, was sleeping with the hotel owner. The idea was absurd. But I let her savor the miscalculation for a moment. Her confusion was, for the first time, a disadvantage for her. My connection to Owen Mercer was not forged in secret trysts. It was forged in a classroom, 2 years ago, at the Harbour and Stone Institute. After my husband Tom died, the silence in my house was deafening. But worse than the silence was the slow, creeping realization that I was losing my son, too. Caleb was always busy, always stressed, always managing Lana's anxieties. I knew I needed to do something with the money Tom had left, something for myself. So, I enrolled in a continuing education course, hospitality finance. I never told Caleb. He would have tried to talk me out of it. Or worse, he would have told Lana, who would have dismissed it as a widow's folly. Owen was my lecturer. He was not just an academic. He was a pragmatic, sharp-minded local investor who understood that the hospitality business was not about soft pillows, but about hard contracts. I was his most diligent student. I stayed late, asking about investment structures, yield management, and liability. He saw something in me, not a grieving widow, but a sharp mind. He was the one who taught me how to leverage assets, and I, a mother desperate to see her son, saw an opportunity. Contracts, he had said over coffee after our final class, can secure more than just money. They can secure time. They can secure access. He guided me. He showed me how to add personal priority clauses to certain bookings, legal stipulations that would force a meeting, force a weekend. It was a desperate, contractual way to demand that my son spend private time with his mother. I had tried the soft approach. I sent 3 handwritten letters to Caleb, to the home he shared with Lana. I wrote about Silver Ridge, about the cabin we used to rent every fall when he was 9, about how I missed the smell of the pine trees and the sound of his laugh. I received no reply. When I sent emails, I received the automatic read receipts from their shared family account, always within minutes of sending them. But Caleb never responded. The wall was too high, and Lana was the gatekeeper. I remembered the last time I saw them, at a tense Thanksgiving dinner. I had mentioned a local craft fair. Lana had laughed, a short, sharp bark. "Mother Hale," she had said. "Caleb has a work image to maintain. That old-fashioned stuff. It just makes him look provincial. You should try to avoid embarrassing him." I was not just a mother. I was a liability. So I chose Silver Ridge for this trip, the place that held our last good memories. But I did not just book a room. I did not tell anyone, not even Caleb, what I did with the last of my savings. I became a silent partner. I invested in the Riverton Crests suite renovation package. It was a small stake, only 3%, but it was targeted. My investment was tied specifically to the Aspen suite, and my contract, drafted with Owen's guidance, included that very specific addendum, the right to reserve and occupy Suite 414 for 6 weekends per year, a right that superseded any other booking, a right that could not be overridden by staff, and a right that was absolutely non-transferable. Owen's hug in that hallway was not the embrace of a lover. It was the embrace of a business partner. It was an apology for his staff's error and a confirmation that he would protect his most specialized client. I looked at Lana's face, still tight with suspicion. I looked at Caleb, his face pale with confusion. For 2 years, I had stayed quiet, absorbing the dismissals, allowing myself to be erased, standing in the lobby, with the weight of Owen's authority at my back. I made a decision. I was done being silent. I was done being old-fashioned. This was not a family disagreement anymore. This was a breach of contract. The lobby was too public for what was to come. Owen, sensing the shift in the air, gestured with a firm hand toward a set of double doors off the main hall. The spruce conference room. Now. We walked in, the six of us. Owen did not sit at the head of the long, polished table. He went straight to the built-in cabinet, switching on a large projector and screen. The quiet hum of the fan filled the room as the screen flickered to life. He connected his laptop, and the first image he projected was the system log. The single red line stood out. Booking 414 Aspen. Ownership transfer. 1407. Admin ID EV Knight. Maya, Owen said, his voice echoing slightly in the wood-panelled room. Please tell us exactly what happened at 2:07 this afternoon. Maya, standing near the door, twisted her hands. I got a call on the internal line. The voice said he was the EV Knight manager doing a remote system check. He said there was a glitch and he needed me to manually execute a transfer of ownership for Suite 414 from Hale to Whitmore. And you did it, Lana said, her voice dripping with condescension. Sounds like you are the one who made the mistake. No, Owen said, his voice cutting her off. He clicked to the next slide. It was a string of code. This is the digital fingerprint of the card used for the override. We keep a log of all admin card signatures. This one does not match any of our manager's cards, not a single one. He looked directly at Elise. It was a clone, a forgery. Elise gave an involuntary gasp, a tiny, strangled noise. Miranda saw the panic in her sister's eyes and immediately went on the attack, her voice booming. A clone card. In your hotel, this is an outrageous security failure. Our privacy has been compromised. Your procedures are clearly lax, negligent even. Owen did not flinch. He simply advanced to the next slide. It was a wall of text, the hotel's VIP privacy preservation clause. On the contrary, Mrs. Whitmore, Owen said, his voice dangerously quiet. Our procedures are ironclad. He read from the screen. Any attempt to alter a priority-locked booking without the physical presence and signature of the original signatory shall be considered null and void. He looked up. The booking, legally, never left Margaret's name. Lana gave a short, humorless laugh. This is absurd. We are the clients. We are the guests who bring this place prestige. You should be apologizing to us. Owen's face remained impassive. Prestige. He said the word as if tasting something sour. He typed something, and the screen changed again. It was an email, and then another. Is this your prestige, Mrs. Whitmore? Owen asked. An email to the Mountain Laurel Lodge from last May, threatening to ruin their concierge for not giving you a free upgrade. Or this one, to the Silver Ridge Grand, calling their waitress unacceptably common. Miranda's face, for the first time, turned from anger to a dark, mottled red. She was speechless. The silence was broken by Caleb. His voice was cracked, raw, the sound of something finally breaking. He was not looking at Owen. He was looking at his wife. Lana. Why? Caleb asked. Why did you have to do this? Lana turned on him, her eyes flashing. Because, Caleb, my family does not accept coming in second. We do not accept being given a standard room while she pointed at me, takes the suite. It is about what we deserve. This trip was never about you, Lana, I said, my voice cutting through the hysteria, calm and level. I booked this trip just for Caleb and me, just the two of us. I did not mention my investment. I did not mention my 3%. I held that trump card close to my chest, letting them fight over the smaller pot. Owen had seen enough. He closed the laptop. The screen went black. "This meeting is over," he said. He looked at Maya, who was still by the door. "Go to the front desk. Lock all key access to the Aspen suite, all of it. Then, issue one new, high-security key. You will give it directly to me." He turned his gaze on our stunned group. "The suite belongs to Margaret. That is the temporary decision, and it is final." The projector screen was black, but it left an afterimage in the room, a stark record of their actions. The silence that followed Owen's decision was heavier than the argument had been. It was Caleb who broke it, but he was not speaking to Owen or to me. He was still looking at Lana, his voice hollow. "My friends, Lana, my old friends, they do not call anymore. Did you know that?" He was not really asking her. He was stating a fact he had just allowed himself to understand. "Every time I try to see Mom, there is always a conflict. A dinner, a client emergency you forgot to tell me about. Every single time." Lana's defensive mask, the one made of arrogance, finally cracked. Tears welled in her eyes, but they were not tears of remorse. They were tears of rage and self-pity. "You do not understand," she shot at him. "You have no idea what it is like. I was raised with standards. Perfect standards." She gestured wildly toward her mother. "My entire life, failure was not an option. It was shame. It was humiliation. Do you think I want to be the one who gets the standard room, the one who looks weak?" Miranda, who had been simmering, nodded in grim approval. "I taught you well, Lana. I taught you to choose your class. You do not let people walk over you. You do not settle." The air in the room grew cold. I looked at Miranda, her face set in a mask of absolute, unbending entitlement. "Choose your class, Miranda," I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Or just eliminate the people who do not fit into it." My question hung in the air, and I saw Caleb flinch, as if I had struck him. He looked down at his hands, which were clenched on the polished table. I had a job offer. Last year." His voice was thick. "A transfer to the Singapore office. A big promotion." Lana froze. "Caleb, do not." She cried. Caleb continued, speaking to the table, to the empty air, to anyone but his wife. She cried for 3 days, not about the job, but, "You are leaving me. You are choosing a job over me. You are abandoning me." He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a pain that was more than a decade old. "It was not a transfer, Mom. It was a 3-month assignment. I turned it down." This was a confession, not about a hotel room, but about a life. I did not criticize him. I did not point out the manipulation. I had lived a lifetime, and I knew that judgment was a wall, not a bridge. I just looked at my son, the man I had raised, and asked the only question that mattered. "Caleb, are you happy?" He did not answer. He just stared at me, his jaw working, his silence a deafening scream. It was Elise, the aunt, who could not stand the vulnerability. She snapped, her voice shrill. "Oh, this is ridiculous. All this drama over a room. We need 5 rooms. 5 as for you. She pointed a bony finger at me. Any room would have been fine. A cot in the hallway would be fine. Owen stepped forward from the doorway, his patience gone. That is enough. His voice was not loud, but it cut through the room like a steel blade. Mrs. Whitmore. Ms. Elise. Our hotel policy is clear. Any guest who threatens or verbally harasses our staff, or another guest, will be asked to leave. We will refuse service. Miranda looked at him, and her lips curled into a slow, challenging smirk. It was a look of pure defiance, a silent promise that she was untouchable. She was daring him to escalate. In that moment, watching the poison of that family, watching my son's silent agony, I saw the future. If I did not cut this cancerous loop, if I did not sever this hold, I would not just lose a weekend with Caleb. I would lose him forever, swallowed whole by their consuming, destructive need. Miranda's challenge hung in the air, thick and toxic. Her smirk was still fixed in place, daring Owen to act when his suit pocket buzzed. It was not a polite vibration. It was an insistent, urgent summons. Owen glanced at the screen, his expression immediately hardening. He did not apologize for the interruption. He just answered, his voice pure business. Luca, what is it? He listened, his face a mask. I see. Yes. She is here now. Yes. The entire party. He paused. Send it. Send it now. He turned back to the projector while still on the call, plugging his laptop back in. The screen lit up again. An email inbox appeared. A new message flashed at the top. Luca Barrett, Owen said, tapping his phone to put the call on speaker. Is the coordinator at the Mountain Laurel Lodge, our main competitor across the valley? Owen. A new voice crackled through the speaker. I am glad I caught you. I am forwarding you the email thread now. We have a situation. A Mrs. Miranda Whitmore booked 5 rooms provisionally this morning. Miranda's head snapped up. The email from Luca appeared on the screen, magnified for the whole room to see. We read the thread. It was Miranda, demanding that her 5 backup rooms be upgraded to junior suites, free of charge. When Luca politely declined, citing availability, Miranda's reply was stark. The email, Luca's voice continued, was sent about an hour ago. Let me read the last line. If you cannot accommodate this simple request, I will ensure my 1-star review is the first thing every potential guest reads this season. We know how this works. Owen clicked, end call. He looked at Miranda. Blackmail. Miranda. Over 5 rooms you did not even intend to use. You were just holding them hostage in case this fraud did not work out. Before Miranda could form a response, Owen's radio, clipped to his belt, crackled to life. Mr. Mercer, this is security. We found it. Found what? Owen asked, picking up the radio. The EV night card, sir, the clone. It was fished out of the trash receptacle in the main floor ladies' restroom, near the lobby. Owen's eyes immediately found Elise. We checked the hall cam, sir. The radio voice continued. As you requested. We have a positive ID, a female guest, matching the description of Ms. Elise Whitmore, entered that restroom approximately 10 minutes ago. She was the only one in or out. The colour drained from Elise's face. It was not a slow blush. It was a sudden, sickly white. The forgery was no longer an abstract accusation. It was a physical object, discovered, and traced directly to her. She looked at her sister, then at Lana, and she completely fell apart. I just did it because she asked. Elise burst into tears, the ugly, gulping sobs of the truly guilty. She said she needed it. The girl needs face. She cannot be seen as less than. Lana stared at her aunt, her mouth open, but no sound came out. This was not the elegant defense of a high-status family. This was a tacky, desperate, and now very public confession. The wall of family prestige was not just cracked, it had crumbled into dust at her feet. She looked humiliated, cheapened by the very people she was trying to emulate. Caleb, who had been staring at the table, finally looked up. His face was a knot of shame and anger. He looked at his wife, and his voice was low, trembling with a force I had not heard in years. We are humiliating my mother. He did not say you, he said we. It was the first time he had included himself in the failure. We are standing here, humiliating my mum, over a bed. Only Miranda seemed immune to the shame. She drew herself up, her spine rigid. Do not be so pathetic. All of you, she hissed. Money is the voice. We have money. We bought the bed. This is a simple transaction they have failed to honor. Owen slammed his open palm flat on the conference table. The sound was like a gunshot, silencing her instantly. Here, Mrs. Whitmore, Owen said, his voice deadly calm. Rules are the voice, and you have broken every single one of them. I said nothing. I kept my trump card, the document that proved I owned 3% of that very suite. Hidden. This was not the time. They needed to finish imploding on their own. But I could not stop the hot, sharp sting of tears in my eyes. Not tears of sadness, but of a terrible, painful release. The conference room, with its thick wooden doors, suddenly felt small. I glanced toward the glass panels that faced the lobby. We were not in a private room. We were on display. Other guests, sensing the drama, had slowed their walk. They were standing by the large fireplace, pretending to check their phones, their eyes darting toward our glass-walled room. They could not hear the words, but they could see the tears, the security radio on the table, the magnified emails on the screen, and Owen's towering rage. The pressure was no longer just in the room. It was all around us. Owen looked away from the drama and back to business. He spoke to Maya, who had returned to the doorway. Please call security. Have 2 guards meet us in the lobby. He then turned his gaze, cold and final, upon Miranda and Elise. Under the hotel's operating license and private property rights, I am officially refusing service to you, Mrs. Whitmore, and to you, Ms. Elise, on the grounds of forgery, attempted fraud, and harassment of staff and guests. He then looked at Lana and Caleb. Your other 4 standard room reservations will be honored, should you choose to stay. But to be clear, the Aspen suite is off the table. Lana looked completely broken, caught between the 2 halves of her life. She looked at her mother, her voice a desperate plea. Mum, Aunt Elise, just go, please. Go home. Go. Miranda shrieked, her voice echoing in the conference room. No one tells me to go. I am a paying guest. You cannot throw me out. Actually, Owen said, as 2 uniformed security guards appeared silently at the door. We can. And we are? The guards did not touch them. They simply stood, flanking the exit, their presence an impassive wall. One of them spoke, his voice polite but firm. Ma'am, we will be happy to help you with your luggage. Elise, sobbing, grabbed her purse and fled the room, pushing past the guards. Miranda stood for one more second, her face a mask of pure hatred. She looked at me, then at Owen, and finally at her daughter. "You," she spat at Lana, "are a disappointment." She turned and marched from the room, her head held high, as the guards fell into step behind her to ensure she went straight to the lobby and out the door. We were left in the sudden, ringing silence me, Caleb, Lana, and Owen. Lana was staring at the floor, crying silently. Caleb looked like he was watching a building from his childhood burn to the ground. Owen stepped over to me. He was holding another envelope. It was not the large manila one from the safe. This one was a standard, white business envelope, also bearing my name. "I had this ready," Owen said quietly, his voice only for me, "in case your daughter-in-law continued to dispute the claim." Lana's head lifted at the word dispute. Her tears stopped. "She is still here." "Owen," I said, my voice clear. I took the envelope from his hand. I did not need to open it. I knew what it was. But Lana needed to see it. I broke the seal. I pulled out the single, folded sheet of paper. Lana, mistaking it for another complaint or a letter, let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "What is that? Another rule you wrote?" "No," I said, turning the paper and holding it so she could read the header. "It is a memorandum of investment." Lana squinted, then her eyes went wide. She stepped closer, reading the first paragraph. What is this Margaret Hale? Minority investor, 3% stake, Aspen Suite upgrade package. Her voice rose to a near shriek. "You own part of this place." She looked at me, not with anger, but with a new, terrifying kind of comprehension. The suspicion of an affair was gone, replaced by the much colder reality of a financial power she had never suspected I possessed. The paper I held, the one Owen and I had signed 18 months ago, stipulated my small financial contribution. But more importantly, it stipulated my terms. It granted me, Margaret Hale, personal and non-transferable veto rights over the booking of Suite 414 for 6 weekends per year. Weekends of my choosing. Caleb finally moved. He stepped toward me, his eyes not on the paper, but on my face. He looked stunned, as if he was seeing me for the first time. "Mum," he said, his voice hoarse with a new emotion. It was awe, but it was also laced with a profound, piercing sorrow. "You did all this? You invested in a hotel, just to get 1 weekend with me." I folded the paper, the crisp sound loud in the quiet room. I looked at my son, my heart aching with the truth. "I did not want to buy you, Caleb," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was breaking. "I just wanted to buy a chance to talk." The lobby, just outside the glass doors, was utterly silent. Even the guests who had been staring had looked away, as if this final admission was too private, too raw to witness. The only sound left was the sharp, rhythmic crackle of the logs shifting in the grand fireplace. I put the investment memorandum back into its envelope. Caleb's question, his pained, shocked realization that I had to literally buy my way back into his life, hung in the air between us. I turned away from my son and looked at my daughter-in-law. Lana was no longer the composed, surgical tyrant from the lobby. She was a ruin. "Lana," I said. My voice was not harsh, just clear. "You do not have to kneel before your mother's cruel standards, but you do not get to do it by stepping on me." The performance was over. The calculated tears she had used earlier were replaced by a raw, ugly sob that tore itself from her throat. It was the sound of a complete and total unravelling. "I am scared," she whispered, the words thick with tears and shame. She was not speaking to me, but to the room, to the empty space where her authority used to be. "You do not understand. If I fail, if I am not perfect, I lose my place. I lose everything. I am nothing." "A place?" Caleb's voice was sharp, cutting through her self-pity. He shook his head, his disgust palpable. "You cannot build a place on lies, Lana. You cannot build it on humiliating people. Not on my mother." Owen, who had stood back to let this final toxic abscess drain, stepped forward. He was the proprietor again, the man in charge of restoring order. "Here is the solution," he announced, his voice firm, leaving no room for negotiation. "The Aspen Suite, as legally contracted, remains with Margaret Hale. She will stay in that room, alone." He fixed his gaze on Caleb, and his tone was not unkind, but it was absolute. "Caleb, you have a choice to make. Your other reservations for the standard rooms are still valid. You may take one of them, or you may leave with your wife." He held up a hand, silencing the protest that was forming on Lana's lips. "This choice, however, must be yours. Yours, and yours alone. No one will pressure you, and no one will speak for you." The ultimatum was clinical. It was perfect. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see Miranda in the main lobby. She had not left the building. She was pacing near the front desk, her face puce, yelling into her cell phone, no doubt at some unfortunate employee at the Mountain Laurel Lodge. As if summoned. Owen's phone vibrated on the table. He picked it up, read the incoming text message, and did not bother to hide his expression. He looked at Lana. "That was Luca Barrett. The Mountain Laurel Lodge has just informed Mrs. Whitmore that, due to her behavior, all her reservations have been permanently cancelled. They have blacklisted her." At that exact moment, as if the universe had a sense of timing, Lana's own phone began to buzz frantically on the table. The screen lit up, Mother. We all watched it. The phone vibrated, a furious, insistent summons. It stopped, then immediately began again. "Mother." Lana stared at the name. Her hands were shaking, she was a puppet, and her master was pulling the strings, demanding she answer, demanding she fix this. The phone rang and rang, slowly, her face pale. Lana reached out. Her finger hovered over the screen. Then, in one decisive movement, she pressed the button on the side. The screen went dark. The ringing stopped. She had not answered. It was the first time, I realized, that she had ever rejected the call. I felt no joy, no surge of victory. I just wanted a clean end. I was so tired of the fighting. Caleb took a deep, shuddering breath. He looked at his wife's pale, tear-streaked face. He looked at Owen. Then he looked at me. "Mom," he said, his voice quiet, raw. "Can I have 5 minutes? Just us. By the fireplace." Owen nodded once, stepping aside to let us pass. The staff at the desk, the few remaining guests in the lobby, all seemed to be holding their breath. We walked out of the conference room, the 20 feet to the massive stone fireplace feeling like a mile. We stood in its warmth, the flames crackling, the only sound in the vast, quiet lobby. Caleb stared into the fire, not at me. "If I stay?" he asked, his voice so low I could barely hear it. If I choose to stay in the standard room tonight, am I betraying my wife? I wanted to tell him he had been betraying himself for years. I wanted to tell him he had been betraying me. But the moment was too fragile, too important. I looked at the profile of my son, the boy who used to love these mountains, the man who had forgotten how to choose. "Caleb," I said, "just make sure you do not betray yourself." My son's question, "Am I betraying my wife?" hung in the warm air by the fire. He had already answered it himself. He just needed to say it aloud. He was silent for a long moment, watching the flames. Then he straightened. He turned from the fire and walked back to the front desk, back to the center of the lobby, back to his wife. He did not look at me. He looked directly at Lana. His voice was not angry, not loud, but it was the clearest I had heard it in years. It was a voice I recognized. "I am staying here tonight," he said. "With Mom. I will take one of the standard rooms." Lana's watery gaze snapped up, ready to protest. But he continued, his voice cutting through her unspoken defense. "And tomorrow," he said, "you and I are going to talk. Seriously. We are going to find a professional, a therapist, and we are going to talk. And there will be no one else in the room. No one." Lana stared at him, her entire world, her entire system of manipulation, collapsing in on itself. All she had left was this one man, and he was finally setting terms. She searched his face for weakness, for a sign he might bend. He did not. Slowly, her body seeming to deflate. She nodded. Just once. A tiny, broken movement. Then, she did something that surprised me. She pulled out her own phone, her fingers shaking, and opened a rideshare app. She did not look at Caleb for permission. She did not ask him what to do. She simply ordered a car to take Miranda home. It was the first decision I had ever seen her make for herself. Owen, seeing the resolution, stepped forward. He held out a single, white key card. "Margaret." I took it from him. I walked to the elevator bank, stepped inside, and rode up to the 4th floor. I walked to suite 414. The door was still ajar from their hasty entrance. I pushed it open, retrieved Lana's suitcase from my bed, and placed it neatly in the hallway. Then I closed the door, inserting the key to engage the lock from the outside. The sharp, clean beep of the lock activating was the sound of a final verdict. When I returned to the lobby, Lana's phone was buzzing on the counter again. "Mother?" The screen flashed. A desperate, angry summons. Lana looked at it, then at Caleb, then at me. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, she picked up the phone, turned it over, and placed it screen down on the polished granite. A symbolic, silent cutting of the cord. Caleb turned to me. His eyes were clear. He stepped forward and he hugged me. This was the second hug. It was not the fast, protective rescue that Owen had given me. This one was slow, hesitant, and then strong. It was not a gesture of procedure. It was a choice. It was a return. In the lobby, Owen cleared his throat, and his voice rang out, clear and authoritative, for the remaining guests and staff to hear. "Ladies and gentlemen, the internal security issue with a cloned manager card has been resolved. The code has been permanently deactivated, and our security protocols are being upgraded immediately. Thank you for your patience." The staff behind the desk, who had been watching, frozen, for the better part of an hour, let out a collective breath. There was a smattering of small applause. Maya, her face no longer pale with fear, came out from behind the desk. She was carrying a fresh cup of coffee on a small tray. She handed it to me, her hand perfectly steady. The vulnerable had been protected. The right thing had been done. I took a sip. It was hot and strong. I looked at Lana, who was still standing by her silenced phone, waiting for the car she had ordered. I did not feel triumphant. I felt clear. "Lana," I said, and she flinched, expecting another blow. "If you need to have a conversation tomorrow," I said, "one without scorn, one without keeping score, you know where to find me. We do not sell face here. We just offer respect." She just nodded, her eyes fixed on the floor. The large revolving doors at the entrance spun, and a gust of cold mountain wind swept into the lobby, momentarily disturbing the perfect peace. But then the doors clicked to a halt, and the lobby was still once more. I nodded to Owen. I nodded to my son. And I walked to the elevator, my keycard held tightly in my hand. The doors to the Aspen suite shut firmly behind me. The lock clicked, a final, quiet sound. The knot, tightened over years of silence and shame, was finally, completely undone. Thank you so much for listening. Please comment and let us know where in the world you are listening from, so we can all connect and share our thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, like this video, and give us your support by hitting that hype button to help this story be heard by so many more.